Hey kids, howdy. Welcome once again to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. Hey Zoe, we're into March. It's March 10th. I hope you have your seatbelt on, yes?
Because are we in 3 retrogrades right now?
Yeah, we're in eclipse week. We're in, What did you say in the weeds?
No, I said eclipse, yeah.
Oh, eclipse, yes. So in the weeds or in eclipse season, sort of the same thing. In the weeds is an old waiting tables term for when you're just flying through. Everybody wants something from you and you're overwhelmed, but your body keeps moving and you lose your mind for a little bit. That's us. We're in the weeds because everything is moving and crazy, and we get to add the eclipses to everything else. And so we got a lot to talk about this week. But first, I wanted to, in lieu of answering a question, I wanted to talk about an experience that I had this past weekend that's personal to me about what I do and the impact it has, but something that I don't ever really think about unless it's brought to my attention in this way. Let me just start with reading the email from Kristen. Hi, Dr. Michael Lennox. My name is Kristen, and at 8 a.m. Sunday, March 2nd, I met you on a hike at Fryman in Studio City. This email isn't for anything other than to tell you how much that interaction meant to me. Penelope ran up to me and I asked if I could pet her. When you said yes, I immediately recognized your voice, which I love. Total transparency. I don't have social media, so I truly had no idea what you look like, but that voice is undeniable, which I fucking love. I almost didn't go on my hike that morning, just feeling blah, but I peeled myself out of bed and I asked Spirit to give me a sign that I was on the right path. Then I ran into you. I cried the rest of my hike, and even though it was a small interaction, you truly have no idea, and this is accurate, what it did for me just to shake your hand and tell you that you get me through my week every week with your, with your podcast. Thank you so much for being such a bright fucking light. And she used the word fucking. I love that. Bright fucking light in this time of darkness. Tell Zoe and Penelope I say hello, and thank Penelope, for running up to me. You have no idea how much I needed it. Love and light. And then she signs it off with have at it. Wow. First of all, it was a beautiful interaction. And indeed, I wasn't looking at her because I was clocking Penelope, making sure she was behaving appropriately. And I heard her ask, which I loved. And I was like, yes. And so after a moment, she just sheepishly said, excuse me, but are you Michael Lennox? Right? And so my Leo sensibility, I love getting recognized. I really do. And she stuck her hand out. She shook my hand and introduced herself. And we both went on our way, shifted and changed, me in an egoic way, it's like fluffed up, like, I got recognized, isn't that fun? But then I got home and I got this email and I just wept because my work has impact, yes, I'm sure, but that's not my story. My story isn't the impact of my work. My story is the doing of it. And so it's not like I'm ignorant of this impact. It's just it doesn't run through my mind and body and heart on any kind of a regular basis. I just sometimes think I can get the fuck out of bed and do it for the day so that I can keep my commitment to service in the way that I do. And so she had an incredible experience of the synchronicity that she's on the right path, and so did I. All right, it is a complex week. The big news of the week, of course, is that on Thursday, we have our full moon in Virgo. That is our first eclipse of eclipse season. So While the new moon wasn't an eclipse that led us into this lunar cycle, the fact that it contains an eclipse and that the next new moon is an eclipse has been part of why the whole, month has been kind of crazy. But there's a few things that are happening outside of the eclipse that really need some talking about. So let's start with tomorrow, when Mercury in his shadow, meaning he's moving directly, but will cover this territory again when he turns around, and Venus, who's already in her backward motion in the sign she's least comfortable in, Aries. And so they're like crisscrossing tomorrow. Like they're meeting in, like two ships passing in the night, right? Because Mercury's moving forward, Venus is moving backward. So if you anthropomorphize this moment as we're leaning into the eclipse that happens later in the week, we get this really interesting sort of like snapshot of what's going on inside of each of us with regard to having mind and heart in congruence, which these two retrogrades are designed to sort of generate for us. All Venus retrogrades allow us to shed blocks to love and clarity about the emotional body's information, how we relate to our finances with more grace, and how we are readier than not to have expanded relationship and intimacy experiences. Mercury is about perception, right? So that's why the congruence is so important, because if you're not perceiving and seeing what the heart is communicating to you, then you're creating with this discordance, and you're like telling the universe, I think I want this, but I feel differently about that. If you've been following me a while as a psychologist, I'm always talking about Venus as connected to worthiness. Because Venus, as the emotional body, is the part of our four-body system that speaks to whether or not we feel worthy of receiving love. And Venus in Aries is like, it's the most unloving territory for her. So the process that we're in is dicier because of that. Like the emotional timbre that we're all in is a little bit on fire because the planet of love and the emotional body is in a fiery house. But tomorrow, pay attention, today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, about anything that connects to how you're perceiving your life and how your heart feels. All of us are going to have some all of us in the collective are going to have an individual experience as we move through the first 3 days of this week that will be instructive at the personal level for where you're at in that thing of heart and mind incongruence. Not only would I expect you to have some interesting conversations or thought paradigms these couple of days, you also want to be paying attention in a kind of witness way. Meaning the part of you that can watch what's happening without being triggered by the things that are happening in 3D form so that you can have some awareness, some observation. Like, oh, look, I'm being triggered by that relationship. I wonder what I can do to move through this with a greater... Penelope speaks up because Penelope is helping me have a greater experience of congruence between mind and heart, that she helps me see that love is everywhere. So take a look at that idea, where is love in your life, over these couple of days, and understand that you might be given some information that will be valuable in the weeks to come. Now, there's another sort of portal that we step through on Wednesday. This is the sun in conjunction with Saturn at 22 degrees of Pisces. This is another, pay attention to everything that's up for you so that you can have some information from the unconscious mind about the changes and transformations you're going through, which is a good thing to have considering there's so much Piscean energy. Pisces invented the unconscious, so we really all are flying blind in a way of moving by faith and not knowing what's going to happen next, and yet life demands us to move forward and do our thing and also take in the changing world around us. That's nothing short of terrifying. So if the sun is our conscious awareness and Saturn is our teaching mechanism and the do the right thing and show up to responsibility and discipline and know your karmic contract and be willing to accept the lessons you have to learn in this life, we have this interesting teacher moment on Wednesday that leads into the next day's eclipse. Now, part of why this is so juicy, for those of you who follow astrology regularly enough, and if you follow me, you know that I've been talking all about the rebirthing that we are in. Pisces is the gestational container, and Aries is the burst into form that this year, especially the first part of it, is just explosive with Neptune and Saturn and Mercury and Venus all back and forthing over this sensitive point. But we're not in birth moment, we're in labor. Like eclipse season is like screaming, get me to the hospital, call the midwife.
Are we at the peak, you'd say?
Oh, God, there's going to be so many of them this year.
Okay.
We are in the peak of what I would call the first third of the year's challenges because we've got the hot summer to come. And so we're not anywhere near the peak of that.
Okay.
But we are in the peak of what I would call the preparation, meaning we are rebirthing who we are, how we speak, how we use our voice, how we walk our walk, how we give and receive love.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a function of that birth canal, 30th Pisces, 0 Aries, that we will get to when Saturn and Neptune and Mercury and Venus cross that point. But because this week is Saturn with the sun, we get the blessing of some conscious awareness of material that would otherwise be not known to us, too deep in the unconscious, and we can benefit from that. So in fact, there's sort of this 1, 2, 3 punch thing where Tuesday, it's about mind and heart congruency. Wednesday, it's about, are you showing up to the discipline and responsibility needed to live your best life? And then we move into the surgery that occurs with Thursday's eclipse. Remember that all eclipses are just lunations. So they follow the same rules of every new moon or full moon. So from a simplistic perspective, this is a full moon where we celebrate the wins and recognize what we've created and release everything that got us there that no longer serves. So we build the scaffolding to create something new. The full moon is when we've made it. Now we can eat it or consume it or give it away, but we've got to release as much gunk as we possibly can in order to move more powerfully forward in the manner that a new moon that is also an eclipse that's coming in 2 weeks that will thrust us forward, right? So the release portion of this eclipse is important. It's epic. And remember that the sun is in Pisces, which means we really are underwater in the ocean, marinating with everything that's below the surface of conscious awareness to whatever extent that's possible. That's what the sun in Pisces offers us. It's the moment in our astrological year where we're wrapping up the whole year, getting ready to start again with the Aries equinox that's coming. And so we spend the whole mansion with more awareness about the mystery and the behind the scenes and the unconscious than we could typically otherwise experience. So then the moon moves into Virgo at some point during Pisces Mansion, and now we have our conscious awareness connected to the animating force of spirit. With the moon in Virgo, the energy that created the Merkaba of our bodies that we ride through life, animated by spirit. Mm-hmm. Sometimes people get confused about what I mean by this with Virgo. Let me clear up. Aries rules the body. Your rising sign is your physical presence as an alive person, and the physical body's presence is a Mars/Aries thing. But it's Virgo that built the thing. Like Virgo said, all right, I got all the parts. I see all you want to accomplish. I'll make the body and I'll keep it healthy and I'll keep you in a healing mode. I will demand that you be of service to others with all that you're healing. And that's the Pisces-Virgo continuum. So truly, this is a moment where we get to release boatloads of unconscious crap where you don't even really have to know with your mental body what it is you're releasing. You know, this is where the beautiful prayer that I offer when Pisces is prominent. Like you have heard, if you've been following me for a while, you have heard this prayer before, but when you hear it is when Pisces is in the house in a big way. So the prayer would go something like, I am ready to release everything, known and unknown, conscious and unconscious. That part's important, both realms. That inhibits my masterful living, my ability to create powerful healing for myself so that I might serve others with greater power, focus, and magnitude. And so it is, blah, blah, blah. All prayers are answered, and your unconscious knows itself. We don't know it, but it knows itself. So that's why this prayer works. Now, of course, you already know from what happened on Tuesday and Wednesday that part of this eclipse and the release that's possible is greater because our mind is where our hearts are in a process of moving backwards. Venus and Mercury on Tuesday. So that gave us or will give us some conscious awareness, mental thoughts about our emotional experience. And Saturn and the sun yesterday makes the whole lunation really important from a Saturnic perspective. Like the teacher is like, you don't get this right, and you might as well jump off the cliff after because the summer's going to kick your ass, and so is 2026. And so Saturn in the room is like, I mean it. Let go. Strap yourself into the psychic surgery table that this eclipse is going to bring us through and allow. Allow. Meaning allow for change, allow for surprises, allow for difficulty, allow for uncomfortable feelings so that you can let the unconscious do what it wants. Mars is now direct, and finally, he's at 18 degrees of Cancer after spending 4 weeks at 17. So that means the body is ready to move and walk our walk in a more powerful way because we've also been in a deep process of how we walk our walk from Mars's retrograde. So the geometry of Mars is that he's trining the sun and sextiling the moon. That means that this eclipse is like putting all of the release that happens right into our bodies, right into our walk. So we're like ready to walk in a new, powerful way, but make no mistake about it, we're not done. That's why I mean we're in labor because Venus and Mercury have to do their thing before we can say we're done with the preparation. So on one hand, the eclipse energy is received by our body, but the mind and heart are not ready, and that speaks to what's happening the day after the eclipse, which is that that's the day that Mercury turns around and goes retrograde. So you might think I buried the lead because Mercury turning around is a big deal.
Yes.
I think the fact that it happens right after the eclipse is a boon to us in a way, right? Because that means that as we are moving through the portal that happens when the geometry of a full moon and an eclipse are exact, so we're in like wild, transformational, fated energy from the solar system saying things can be changed at a remarkable level because it's an eclipse. And the mind is facing out during that moment. So our mentality and our perceptions are receiving the imprint of the eclipse's capacity to open the unconscious for a release. And then by virtue of not going retrograde till the next day, now our minds are carrying with it, or them, our minds, God, that's a sentence. Our minds have the eclipse energy with it, so that as Mercury goes backwards for 2.5 weeks starting on Friday, the mental process in the unconscious, because remember, if Mercury's retrograde, part of him is in our unconscious. That's the value of a retrograde motion. It'll make for a very discombobulating second half of March, but the value is tremendous if you follow the storyline that I'm telling you of perceptions get connected to what our hearts want on Tuesday. Our conscious awareness gets a message from the teacher on Wednesday. We have a psychic surgery on Thursday. And then on Friday, we go into a mental process that's going to have us bumping into the furniture a lot. And we'll start talking about that in next week's episode. Meanwhile, have at it.
Did you know that Michael has a daily astro alert? If you enjoy hearing the weekly astrology, you might like knowing more about each day. When you subscribe for the daily astro alerts, you'll get an in-depth explanation of the day's astrology sent right to your email. Subscriptions are only $10 a month, or you can purchase the yearly subscription at the reduced price of $100. To subscribe, head over to michaellennox.com. All right, it's dream segment time. Every week, Dr. Michael will interpret dreams that are sent in via email or take a live caller. If you would like your dream interpreted on the podcast, you can go ahead and email us at dreams@michaellennox.com. Hopefully your dream will make it onto the show.
We have a dream question in addition to a dream this week.
Ooh, love that.
Yeah. So I'll start with the question, and I'll just read Janie's email. So she says, "Hello, Dr. Lennox. I've debated asking you this question for some time now. I hope you'll be able to guide me down the right path of figuring this out. I have very real feeling dreams, so much so they will wake me from my slumber. I can identify my emotions, whether I am or was in the dream hot or cold, wet or dry, etc. However, I don't remember my dreams, only how I felt them.
Golly, that's interesting.
Once in a while, I'll be able to identify that I was in a chaotic environment. These chaotic dream memories will just be a flash, literally seconds. A burning house, sprinting through hospital hallways, tornado sirens, emergency vehicles. Just to clarify, these are all from different dreams. I keep a dream journal, but outside of that, I'm unaware of how to tap into my memories of dreams. Any advice? Is this happening for a reason? I'd love to know what kind of work I could do with my brain on this. Much love." From SEOK. I'm assuming that's Southeast Oklahoma. Janie.
Okay. What an interesting question. I'm going to start with this, which is everybody has a dream-like signature. Styles of dreams. Mine is community. Every dream I have, I'm in some kind of a community. It doesn't resemble anything from my waking life. And yet, you know me, Zoe, enough to know that I am somebody who is connected to community in my life. We met in such a community. I'm not doing that these days because I'm living a much more hermited chapter. But my whole life, my dream life has reflected this how I'm in the world in community. I can think of a dream circle that I used to hold at the cancer center that I did dream circles with. I'm just thinking of a particular man whose every dream was about like trips through the Old West. Like he's just like every third dream he'd be in the West, as a cowboy or train stations. So one thing that Janie is describing is her fingerprint for dreaming, her signature. So that I want to start with, like, there's nothing wrong with this. One of her questions was, like, does this mean something? And it's like, no, it just means that that's how you dream.
Yeah, is this happening for a reason?
Yeah, that's it. Is it happening for a reason? No, your dreams are not against you. They're always for you. You just have a style of dreaming that's very aligned with your body sensations and emotional timbre that you feel in your body rather than the storylines that I think you covet. You want to know the storylines a little bit. And I get that, but I want to start with your dream life and your psyche are working a beautiful dance. That's what dreams do for us, no matter how you dream. You collect data during the day. You go into this very sacred place at night. You transform who you are by integrating material from the day. And you wake up the next day wiser. And you do this every night for your life so that you get wiser and wiser and wiser with every day that you live. So there's nothing wrong here, Janie. And in fact, I would say there might even be an indication that because you're so sensation-oriented, that it might be that your psyche is processing fast and deeply so that you do get the benefit of the dream state. But your psyche isn't asking you to meet your dream land with knowing the story. Now, one of the things that I encourage people to do when they're trying to just trigger dream memory in general is as follows. And I'm going to suggest this for you, Janie, specifically aligned with the idea that you're already in your dream, but you want a mental picture to emerge more gracefully. It starts with the intention. You got to set the intention before you go to bed that will occur in the morning. You can even write it out as like a letter to your higher self. Hey, just looking for literal, specific clarity of dream content when I wake.
Okay.
Second thing, put the dream journal next to your bed. If your dream journal is not next to your bed, Janie, then you're not really in the dream work because we got to go straight to the journal first thing. And what I tell people who can't remember their dreams at all is that going to the journal is important even when you haven't remembered something because it's sort of like training your psyche to go in that direction upon waking. And so eventually your psyche may respond.
Yeah.
I teach for a living and talk for a living, so I cover the same topics thousands of times, and so I have scripts that I'll use the same way every time I'm talking about such a topic. And the script here is, and then when you wake up, even if you haven't remembered something, write something down, even if it's, I don't remember any, and in this case, Janie would be details, and then you get quiet and you see if something will come. Like a fuzzy orange car or a face. Like that's my language. So Janie, you're already doing that. You already have moments when there's a snippet. And then what you do is you start with that. So let's say the burning house image, right? Yeah. You don't remember any details, but a flash of the burning house and how you feel in the morning. You go to the dream journal and you write out what you experienced, even if it's just like an image, and then you wait. And you just sit with your pen and your paper and try to get comfortable with the liminal space of, I don't know what to write. What should I write? Just sort of sit there for another minute to see if something comes, and then put it away and go on with the rest of your day. I want you to think of that, Janie, as a push-up.
So it's like a push-up a day will get you to 5
That's
push-ups eventually.
right. Maybe the
etc.
first day it's like, holy fuck, I can't do these. And then it's like, I'm doing 5 and I can barely. And then eventually it's a muscle that you strengthen. So just to wrap up, I don't think you need to know what your dream stories are, but I think you can make a request of your psyche to offer more of that. Be consistent, be patient, and have at it.
All right. Now we have a dream from Charity. And Charity says, "Good morning, Michael and Zoe. Thank you for putting out all the magic you create into the world together. It's so appreciated. The past 3 nights, I've had similar dreams with the same ending. In the dream, I'm walking around outside or going for a trail ride on my neighbor's horse. When I get back to the barn, I tie the bridle to the fence so the horse stays in the barn and is safe. But then the neighbor comes back to me to tell me the horse has walked off, and the woman gently asks if I can help find her. We find the horse again, tie it to the fence again, and last night I had this dream 3 times. When we find the horse, she's always calm. I would love any input or ideas you have about this dream. Thank you and namaste."
You know, when I'm listening to a dream, and actually, I don't know if you can hear my typing these days, I have to type out the notes because I'm 61 and my brain's just not as plastic as it used to be. What I'm like listening for is certain things will jump out at me energetically as I'm typing. Sometimes I'll even type the notes in all caps when that happens. And the thing that jumped out to me the strongest as I was taking this dream in, Zoe, is the fence. The fence and the tying the horse to the fence, and then the horse walking away from the fence and then bringing it back to the fence. Fences are a great image for boundaries.
Yes.
Okay? So we know that something about the dream is revealing to Charity issues about something that have to do with boundaries. Interestingly, neighbor also suggests boundaries.
A neighbor suggests boundaries.
Yes, not literally, but think about it. I live in a house. I have neighbors that way and that way. But what's in between us? Boundaries,
Yes,
fences, shrubs, driveways, things that say, I am me, you are you, and we operate separately. So now I'm not talking about spiritual connection. I'm talking about the need to be your own person. So if we're in the outside world and a trail ride, we're in Charity's like very personal journey, like how she's walking through her life as an individual, right? Because it's a natural setting. Like if she was like walking down a city street, I'd be like, oh, you're in your consciousness of collecting to the busy collective in a greater way. But in this dream, you're exploring how you're moving through life and stewarding your power. Horses, power. So that's interesting because it's not Charity's horse. It's her neighbor's horse. So again, that speaks to boundaries, right? Like, forget about the storyline of the dream. If I just look at this idea of neighbors as boundaries and I'm grabbing my neighbor's horse, whose power are you using, right? There's something in that image that is reflecting to Charity that there might be something to consider about how you're stewarding your own power. If Charity were here, we'd be asking about the neighbor, right?
Yeah,
Obviously,
right,
the neighbor exists in real life, it sounds like, and that they have a horse. So now I'm kind of going to contradict that idea because in the last sort of 3 lines of my notes where the neighbor is helpful, helps her find the horse, right? Get my power back. And establish it as connected to my sense of stewardship and boundaries. It's tied up again. So then the neighbor becomes a helpful aspect. So that's curious to me. And then the final sort of piece of information is that if the horse is always calm, then we're not in territory that suggests there's a crisis, but that something is working well. So again, this is the distinction of like flying blind and like having someone here to talk about things and answer questions that I might ask. But the wrap up I'll offer is that Charity, in your movement through life that's deeply personal, this dream is asking you to know your power, know your edges and boundaries, find grace and ease with the way things shift and change in an unexpected way. This could be a dream about power struggles where it's like, wait a minute, who has the power? The dream is like, well, maybe you're giving it away, but you ultimately have the power. Remember that. And that's what I say about power struggles. When Pluto's in town, I'm like, Pluto's asking you who's got the power. Guess what? The answer is always you.
Yeah.
So to me, this all looks like it's going well because there's a natural solution in the dream itself and the horse is calm, which means Charity is working well at being in an experiencing of knowing her power, her edges, her boundaries, and how to keep calm while unexpected things happen and the world tries to like grab your power away from you. You still have it because you know who you are.
Thank you for listening to Conscious Embodiment, Astrology and Dreams with Dr. Michael Lennox. You can find us on Apple Music, the iHeartRadio app, and anywhere you find your favorite shows. Head on over to michaellennox.com for information on astrology readings, the Daily Astro Alert subscription, upcoming classes, and to join the mailing list.